All right, settle in because we're diving deep today. We've got this amazing stack of source material you shared with us. And our mission is to journey through the really epic history of ancient India.
It's quite a scope.
It really is. We're talking millennia here.
Yeah.
From the very first people, walking the land all the way through these incredible civilizations, mighty empires, and just the rise of so many diverse cultures and ideas.
Exactly. And what we want to do isn't just like tick off dates on a timeline.
Right.
We're aiming to pull out the crucial insights, maybe some surprising details from these documents you've given us, help you really grasp the massive transformations this whole subcontinent went through.
How people lived, how society worked.
Yeah, how did they organize themselves? What were the big innovations, the philosophical shifts? We'll navigate these sources to try and give you that clear picture.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. The literal beginning. Prehistoric period.
Way back.
Way back. Paleolithic. Old Stone Age. We're talking maybe 500,000 years ago. Something like that.
Possibly, yeah. It's hard to pin down exactly.
This is the era of nomadic hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
Just imagine groups moving with the seasons, maybe living in caves.
Yeah.
Using the most basic tools.
Really crude stuff initially. Stone flakes, hand axes just chipped from rock. Survival was absolutely key.
But what's amazing, even from the incredibly distant time, is we have glimpses into their world.
We do. These sources highlight sites like Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh. It's famous for its ancient cave paintings.
Ah, right.
And these aren't just random scratches, they show animals, hunting scenes, people dancing even. It gives us this direct window.
Into their minds, their lives.
Exactly. Their creativity, maybe even their spiritual connection to the world. It's not just about the tools. It's the art they left behind. Pretty incredible.
Okay, so moving forward a bit. Mesolithic. Middle Stone Age, around what, 10,000 BCE?
Yeah, give or take. It's a transitional period. The climate's improving after the last ice age, so things are starting to change.
And critically, the tools get better, more refined. This is the age of microliths, right?
Microliths, exactly. Think tiny geometric stone tools, little points, blades, crescent shapes.
Tiny things.
Yeah, really small. And they were often hafted, meaning set into handles of bone or wood.
Ah, okay. To make more complex tools.
Precisely. Like spears, arrows, sickles, maybe. It's a definite leap in technology, more efficient hunting, gathering, processing food.
And during this Mesolithic time, they're still mostly hunter-gatherers. Fishing becomes more important too, I see. But the sources mention the first hints of, while settling down a bit more, semi-permanent settlements starting to appear.
That's right. Not quite permanent villages yet, but they're starting to linger longer in certain favorable spots, maybe seasonal camps that get reused.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the Neolithic, New Stone Age, starting around 7,000 BCE or so.
And this is where things really change. I mean, fundamentally reshape human life in the region.
Absolutely. This is the big one. The birth of agriculture. People actually start cultivating crops. Wheat, barley.
Domesticating animals too. Goats, sheep, cattle, not just hunting them.
And their tools change again. Instead of just chipping stone, they start polishing it. Smoother, more durable axes and tools.
And pottery, that's huge. For storage, for cooking.
You put all that together, farming, animals, better tools, pottery, and what do you get?
Settled village life. People stop chasing their food constantly and start growing it, storing it. This is the foundation for, well, everything that follows. Civilization, basically.
With that big aha moment in history.
Definitely. And the sources give us specific examples. Sites like Merigar, out in modern-day Pakistan, a very early farming village.
Okay.
And Burzahom up in Kashmir, known for its distinctive pit dwellings. People living in pits dug into the ground.
Pit dwellings. Wow. So regional variations even then.
Absolutely. It shows how this agricultural revolution spread and adapted.
So we go from these early villages to something truly mind-blowing. The dawn of urban civilization.
The Indus Valley Civilization, or Harappan, after Harappa, the first site found, flourishing around 2500 down to maybe 1700 BCE.
And this isn't just a few towns. It's a massive Bronze Age culture. Northwestern India, Pakistan. The area it covered was huge, bigger than ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia.
It was vast. And what truly sets it apart, what these sources keep emphasizing, is the incredible level of urban planning.
Yeah, tell us about that. It sounds amazing.
It really is. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, they were laid out on a strict grid pattern, streets running north-south, east-west, intersecting at perfect right angles.
Like a modern city block plan.
Pretty much. And they used standardized baked bricks for construction, not just mud bricks, baked bricks, which are much more durable.
And not just any bricks. The sources mention this uniform size ratio, 1.2.4.
Yeah.
Thickness, width, length.
Yes. Think about the organization needed for that, mass-producing identical bricks across such a huge area.
It screams sophisticated organization. Centralized control, maybe? Advanced engineering, for sure.
It definitely suggests a high level of social and administrative organization, and beyond the grid, the amenities were stunning for the time.
Like what?
Covered drainage systems running beneath the streets, with manholes, inspection holes.
No way. Covered drains back then.
Absolutely. And houses often had access to water from private wells and included dedicated bathing areas or bathrooms, sometimes connected to the street drains.
That level of sanitation. Public health consciousness.
Yeah.
It's astounding for the 3rd millennium BCE.
It really challenges our assumptions about the ancient world, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Okay, what about their economy? How did they support these big cities?
Well, the base was agriculture, as you'd expect, wheat, barley, but also, importantly, cotton. The sources mention Marigar having the earliest evidence of cotton cultivation in the world associated with this culture.
Cotton, wow. And animals?
Domesticated animals, yes. And they engaged in extensive trade, not just locally, but over vast distances.
Like with Mesopotamia, I read they might have called it Maluha.
That's the theory, yes. There's evidence of trade contact. And a crucial detail from the sources is how they traded. They used a barter system, no coined money.
Right, no coins yet.
But they had highly standardized weights and measures. Cubical weights, often made of chert, following a system that seems to be partly binary, based on multiples of 16.
Multiples of 16, that's specific.
It is, and it points to a very regulated economy. They also use seals extensively. These small carved stone objects, often with animal figures in that mysterious script.
Probably for trade, like stamping goods or identifying merchants.
That's the leading theory. Trade documentation, ownership markers, something like that.
And those seals, plus other artifacts like terracotta figurines, there are many mother goddesses type figures. They give us clues about their beliefs, maybe.
They do. The figurines and that famous seal some call Pashupati, a seated figure with horns surrounded by animals, suggests certain religious ideas. Fertility, perhaps nature worship, maybe Proto-Shiva. It's debated.
But here's the twist the sources highlight again. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, there's a striking lack of obvious temples or grand palaces. No monumental religious buildings.
Right. And that absence is really fascinating. What does it mean? Was their society more egalitarian? Was power held differently? Maybe religion was more of a private or household affair?
Or perhaps a different kind of public ritual space we don't recognize.
Possibly. It's one of the big puzzles. And it's tied into the fact that, well, we can't read their writing.
Ah, the script, found mainly on those seals. Short inscriptions. Still undeciphered.
Still undeciphered, frustratingly so. Imagine what we could learn if we could read it. Their history, their beliefs, their literature, told in their own words.
It's a huge gap in our knowledge,
Yeah.
a reminder of how much is still hidden.
Absolutely.
So this incredible civilization, it didn't last forever. It started to decline around 1900 BCE and was gone by about 1700 BCE.
Yeah, the decline seems gradual, not one single event. And the sources suggest a combination of factors.
Like climate change.
Climate change is a big contender. Shifts in monsoon patterns, rivers drying up like a Geiger-Hakara, or perhaps catastrophic floods in other areas. Earthquakes are also a possibility.
Tectonic activity in the region. Makes sense.
Also, maybe a decline in that vital long-distance trade, especially with Mesopotamia, that could have really hurt their economy.
And then there's the theory about migrations.
Yeah.
The arrival of Indo-Aryan speaking groups.
It's part of the discussion, yes. Though the nature and impact of those migrations are still heavily debated among historians, it was likely a complex interplay of environmental stress, economic shifts, and possibly population movements. Not a simple cause and effect.
Okay, that decline leads us into the next major chapter, the Vedic Age. Roughly 1500 down to 600 BCE, named after the Vedas, the religious texts.
Right. And this period itself has two distinct phases, early and later Vedic, showing significant shifts.
How so?
Well, the early Vedic, or Rigvedic phase, say 1500 to 1000 BCE, was centered up in the Punjab-Haryana region, northwest India.
Okay.
Life was largely pastoral. People organized into tribes or janas. Society seems less hierarchical initially, maybe three broad social groups, the Varnas. Political life involved tribal assemblies, the Sabha and Samiti are mentioned, and kingship might have been elective or at least less rigidly hereditary.
So more tribal, pastoral, less settled.
Exactly. But then, in the later Vedic period, roughly 1000 to 600 BCE, there's a major shift eastward, into the Ganga-Yamuna Doab, the fertile plains.
And that changes everything.
It does. This move unlocks large-scale agriculture, especially with the increasing use of iron tools, which start appearing around 1000 BCE.
Iron. That's a game changer for clearing forests and farming heavier soil.
Absolutely. So you get more settled life, agricultural surplus. This supports larger populations, more complex societies, and different political structures.
So the tribal setup changes.
Yes. Those tribal units, the Janas, start consolidating into territorial kingdoms called Janapadas. Kingship becomes more powerful, more hereditary. Those old assemblies, Sabha and Samiti, lose their influence. Power gets concentrated.
And the social structure, the Varna system.
That solidifies too. Initially, it might have been a bit more fluid, maybe linked to occupation, but in the later Vedic period, it becomes much more rigid. A fourth Varna, the Shudras, is clearly defined at the bottom. It becomes hereditary, defining your status by birth.
And the sources also mention a decline in the status of women during this later Vedic phase compared to earlier times.
Unfortunately, yes. The texts suggest women had less access to education, public assemblies, and property rights became more restricted over time.
What about religion during this time? Did that change too?
It evolved significantly. Early Vedic religion, reflected in the Rig Veda, focused on worshiping nature gods Indra for thunder and war, Agni for fire, Varuna for cosmic order, mainly through hymns and relatively simpler fire sacrifices, yajnas.
Okay.
In the later Vedic period, you get the compilation of the other Vedas, the Yajur Veda for rituals, Samaveda for chants, Atharva Veda spells, folk traditions, and the sacrifices, the yajnas, become much more elaborate, complex, and expensive, often controlled by the growing priestly class, the Brahmins. Ritualism really increases.
But alongside that increasing ritualism, something else profound was happening intellectually, right? Around 800, 500 BCE.
Yes, absolutely. This is the era of the Upanishads, a major philosophical shift.
This is where we get some core concepts of Indian thought.
Exactly. Foundational ideas like karma, the law of action and consequence, how your deeds shape your future lives. Moksha, the goal of liberation, escaping the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, which is called samsara.
Okay, karma, moksha, samsara.
And the concepts of Atman, the individual soul or self, and Brahman, the ultimate universal reality or consciousness. The Upanishads explore the nature of these and the deep philosophical idea that the Atman might be identical to Brahman, realizing that unity becomes a path to liberation.
So a move away from just external ritual towards inner knowledge, meditation.
Precisely. A shift towards introspection, knowledge, jhana, and meditation as ways to understand reality and achieve moksha. It's a hugely significant intellectual development, running parallel to and sometimes questioning the ritualistic mainstream.
So as the later Vedic period ends, we have these Janapadas, these kingdoms, growing stronger.
Right. Fueled by agriculture, iron tools, and more complex state structures. By the 6th century BCE, things consolidate further.
Into the Mahajanapadas, the 16 great states.
Exactly. Buddhist and Jain texts list these 16 major states dominating North India. They were significant regional powers, often competing with each other.
Examples like Magadha, Kosala, these were powerful monarchies.
Yes, Magadha especially was on the rise. But what's also fascinating, and the sources mention this, is that not all were monarchies. You had Ganasangas, basically tribal republics or oligarchies. The Vaji Confederacy is a key example.
So republics existing alongside powerful kingdoms way back then, that's pretty interesting.
It shows a diversity in political experimentation. And this whole period, 6th century BCE, with its social changes, the rigidifying Varna system, the complex rituals, it also becomes fertile ground for new religious and philosophical movements.
The Shraman traditions.
Yes. These often emerge, the sources suggest, as a kind of response or alternative to aspects of the dominant Brahmanical system, questioning the authority of the Vedas, the cost and exclusivity of rituals, the inequalities of the Varna system.
And the two most influential movements to come out of this are Buddhism and Jainism.
Absolutely. Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. His core teaching revolves around the Four Noble Truths. Life involves suffering, dukkha. Suffering has a cause, craving, attachment. Suffering can cease, nirvana, and there's a path to cessation, the Eightfold Path.
Emphasizing a middle path between extremes of luxury and harsh asceticism.
Correct. While Jainism, strongly associated with Mahavira, though Jains see him as the last in a line of teachers, put extreme emphasis on ahimsa nonviolence towards all living beings, even microscopic ones.
Right, very strict nonviolence.
And also on Akantavada, the idea that truth and reality are complex, multifaceted, can be seen from many viewpoints, and rigorous asceticism was central to the path for monks and nuns.
Powerful alternatives. And were there others besides Buddhism and Jainism?
Oh yes, the sources mention several others, showing how vibrant the intellectual scene was. There was the Ajivika school, founded by Macaulay Gosala. Their key doctrine was Jnati, basically fatalism or cosmic determinism. Everything is preordained, free will is an illusion.
Wow, that's a stark view.
It is. And then you had the Charvaka school, also called Lokayata. They were radical materialists. They rejected concepts like afterlife, karma, gods, scripture. For them, direct perception was the only valid source of knowledge, and the goal of life was pleasure, seeking happiness in this world.
So a huge range of ideas swirling around, from extreme asceticism to materialism, fatalism to paths of ethical conduct and meditation.
Exactly. It really raises the question of how these diverse, often competing worldviews coexisted and interacted within society at that time. How did they challenge or influence the established Brahmanical framework? It was a period of incredible intellectual ferment.
Okay, all this dynamism, the rise of kingdoms, new ideas, it sets the stage for the first really major unified empire across a large part of India.
The Mauryan Empire, starting around 322 BCE.
Founded by Chandragupta Maurya, and the sources always mention his guide, the famous strategist Chanakya or Kautilya.
Author of the Arthashastra, yes. Chandragupta overthrew the previous Nanda dynasty in Magadha and then expanded rapidly. He even clashed with Seleucus even Nicator, one of Alexander the Great's successors, and gained territory in the northwest. He built a massive empire.
And that Arthashastra, it gives us a picture of their government.
An incredible picture. It describes a highly centralized monarchy, a complex hierarchical administration with numerous departments and officials managing everything: revenue, agriculture, trade, justice, military.
Even spies. I read about the good of Purusha.
Yes. An extensive espionage network is detailed, used for intelligence gathering both internal and external, and maintaining state control. It paints a picture of a very powerful, organized, and somewhat ruthless state apparatus, unlike anything seen before on that scale in India.
But the most famous Mauryan ruler is undoubtedly Ashoka, Chandragupta's grandson, reigned about 268 to 232 BCE.
Ashoka the Great. And his story is remarkable because of that profound personal transformation.
The Kalinga War.
Exactly. The sources describe a brutal, bloody conquest of the Kalinga region on the east coast. The sheer scale of death and suffering caused Ashoka immense remorse.
And that led him to embrace Buddhism.
Gradually, yes, but more uniquely, it led him to formulate his policy of Dhamma, which wasn't just about promoting Buddhism as a state religion.
Right, it was more like a moral code.
Precisely. A code for ethical governance and personal conduct. It stressed nonviolence, ahimsa, tolerance towards all religious sects, respect for elders, teachers, and ascetics, generosity, truthfulness, social harmony. It was about ruling righteously.
And he didn't just talk about it. He actively spread this message.
He did, famously through his rock and pillar edicts. He had these principles carved onto rocks and specially erected polished stone pillars all across his vast empire.
From Afghanistan down to South India, right? In local languages and scripts sometimes.
Yes, using Prakrit language and Brahmi or Kharosthi script mostly. These edicts are incredible primary sources. They give us his own words, his policies, his worldview. And his legacy endures. The lion capital from his pillar at Sarnath is now India's national emblem.
What about the Mauryan economy under him? Was it strong?
It seems to have been, based on strong agriculture, likely aided by state irrigation works. Trade was extensive, both internal and perhaps externally. They used punch-marked coins, which facilitated commerce.
And Ashoka's edicts mention public works.
They do. He talks about planting trees along roads, digging wells, building rest houses for travelers, establishing medical facilities, hospitals for both humans and animals. A real focus on public welfare as part of his Dhamma.
So a powerful, well-administered empire with this unique ethical focus under Ashoka. But it didn't last long after him.
No, the decline seems to have set in fairly quickly after his death, around 232 BCE.
Why was that?
The sources suggest several reasons. Probably a succession of weaker rulers who couldn't hold the vast empire together. The sheer cost, administrative and financial, of maintaining such a centralized state must have been enormous.
Yeah, managing that scale.
Outlying provinces likely started breaking away, asserting their independence, and eventually the last Mauryan ruler was assassinated by his own general around 185 BCE.
Ushering in a period of fragmentation.
Yes. A long period, roughly 200 BCE to 300 CE, often called the Post-Mauryan period, characterized by fragmentation and the rise of numerous regional powers.
So in the north, the sources mention the Sungas and Kandis taking over parts of the old Mauryan heartland.
Correct. Native dynasties. Meanwhile, down in the Deccan, a major indigenous power emerged.
The Satavahanas.
The Satavahanas. Key rulers like Samukha the founder and Gautamiputra Satakarni. Yes, Gautamiputra Satakarni is highlighted for defeating foreign invaders, the Sakas, and restoring the dynasty's power. The Satavahanas controlled a large part of central and southern India for centuries. They were involved in maritime trade, issued their own coins, often lead or potin, and were patrons of both Buddhism commissioning cave complexes like Karl and Brahmanism.
And at the same time, the Northwest was seeing rulers coming in from Central Asia.
Right. A succession of group sucks.
Yeah.
First, the Indo-Greeks, successors to Alexander's generals in Bactria, famous figures like Menander or Milinda.
The one who had dialogues with the Buddhist sage Nagasena in the Nalindapana.
That's the one. His conversion or deep interest in Buddhism is recorded. Then came the Sakas, or Indo-Scythians. Their ruler, Rudradamana Force, is known for a famous inscription at Junagadh.
What's special about that one?
It's one of the earliest major inscriptions written in Sanskrit, and it details his achievements, including repairing a dam originally built by the Mauryans, shows continuity and change.
Okay, Indo-Greeks, then Sakas, and then the Kushanas.
Yes, the Kushanas were arguably the most powerful of these groups. They established a huge empire stretching from Central Asia deep into North India around the 1st to 3rd centuries CE.
And their big name is Kanishka.
Kanishka is the most famous Kushan ruler. He's important for convening the Fourth Buddhist Council, according to tradition, which was pivotal for the Mahayana school of Buddhism.
Mahayana Buddhism really flourished under him.
It did, and this period also saw the peak of Gandhara art, that distinctive style blending Greco-Roman aesthetics with Buddhist subjects centered in the Gandhara region, modern Pakistan, Afghanistan.
So a real melting pot in the Northwest. Okay, let's jump much further ahead now. After the fall of the next big empire, the Guptas, which we'll get to India, enters another period of fragmentation again, the Post-Gupta period, leading into medieval times.
Exactly. Roughly from around 550 CE onwards for several centuries, political decentralization becomes the norm again, with powerful regional kingdoms dominating the landscape.
And in North India during this time, the sources talk about a major power struggle, the tripartite struggle.
That's right. A long conflict spanning maybe the 8th to 10th centuries between three major dynasties vying for control of the strategically important city of Kannauj in the Ganga Valley.
Who were they?
First, the Palas, based in Bengal and Bihar. They were major patrons of Mahayana Buddhism, establishing universities like Vikramashila and Nalanda. Dharmapala and Devapala were key rulers.
Okay, Palace in the east.
Then the Pratiharas, sometimes called the Gujara Pratiharas, based further west in Malwa and Rajasthan. They were powerful rulers like Mihira Bhoja, patrons of Hinduism, and possibly involved in building some of the temples at Khajuraho, though that's more associated with their feudatories, the Chandelas.
Palas, Pratiharas, and the third.
The Rashtrakutas, a major power ruling from the Deccan, but frequently intervening in the north. Danti Durga founded the dynasty. Rulers like Govinda III and Amagavarsha were formidable. They are famed for the incredible rock-cut Kailasa temple at Ellora, just breathtaking architecture.
So intense competition in the north. What about the south during this post-Gupta early medieval period?
South India also saw the consolidation of powerful regional kingdoms with distinct cultures. The Pallavas, based in Tamil Nadu, were pioneers of Dravidian temple architecture, especially rock-cut temples. Mahabalipuram is their showcase.
Mahabalipuram, right, incredible sculptures.
Then the Chalukyas, ruling from the Deccan, mainly Karnataka, they had several branches, known for developing their own distinct temple styles, sort of bridging northern and southern styles sometimes. Pulakesin II is a famous Chalukya ruler who actually defeated the powerful northern emperor Harshavardhana when he tried to expand south.
Wow, so strong regional resistance. And the Cholas, weren't they also huge in the south?
The Cholas eventually became the dominant power in the south, especially from the 9th century onwards. based in the Kaveri Delta in Tamil Nadu.
Rulers like Rajaraja I and Rajendra III.
Exactly. Rajaraja I built the monumental Brihadishvara temple at Thanjavur, a masterpiece of Dravidian architecture. His son, Rajendra I, was even more ambitious. He led military campaigns up to the Ganga River in the north, earning the title Gangaikonda, Conqueror of the Ganga. But even more remarkably, he built a powerful navy and launched overseas expeditions, conquering parts of Sri Lanka and even territories in Southeast Asia, parts of modern-day Malaysia, Indonesia.
A naval power projecting force across the Indian Ocean. That's impressive.
It really was. The Cholas were known for their sophisticated administration, particularly village self-government, their bronze sculptures, and this maritime reach.
And culturally, this whole post-Gupta early medieval period across India, what else was happening?
Well, it saw the flourishing of the Bhakti movement's intense personal devotion to gods like Shiva and Vishnu, often expressed through devotional poetry and songs in regional languages. These movements sometimes challenged caste hierarchies and emphasized direct experience of the divine.
So popular religious movement spreading.
Yes. And alongside that, continued development in regional literatures, classical dance forms like Bharatanatyam gaining prominence in temple contexts, and diverse, elaborate temple architecture becoming a major focus of royal patronage across all these kingdoms.
Okay, now let's rewind just a bit. We skipped over them. Between the post-Mauryan fragmentation and this later medieval regionalism, there was another great empire, the one often called the Golden Age.
Ah, yes, the Gupta Empire, roughly 300 to 550 CE.
Why Golden Age? What makes it stand out?
Well, it was founded by figures like Chandragupta I, not to be confused with the Mauryan founder, and greatly expanded by his successors. Samudragupta, his son, was a brilliant military commander. The sources mention his campaigns across India, earning him that Napoleon of India comparison sometime.
Right, and Chandragupta II, Vikramaditya.
Chandragupta II, Vikramaditya, consolidated the empire, defeated the western satraps, successors to the Sakas in western India, and presided over what is seen as the cultural peak.
How was their administration different from the Mauryans? The sources say less centralized.
It seems so. More decentralized, perhaps relying more on feudatory rulers and local officials who had significant autonomy, maybe closer to a feudal model in some ways. But the empire was clearly prosperous. Trade, both internal and external, like with Rome initially, then Southeast Asia, was strong. Powerful guilds of merchants and artisans existed.
But the real reason for the Golden Age label lies elsewhere.
It really lies in the incredible flourishing of culture, science, and the arts during this period. It's seen as a classical peak.
Like in literature, Kalidasa.
Exactly. Kalidasa, considered perhaps the greatest poet and playwright in Sanskrit literature, lived during this era. His works like Shakuntala are world classics.
And science and math, this is where it gets really mind-blowing.
Absolutely groundbreaking contributions. Aryabhata is the key figure, living in the late 5th to early 6th century CE.
He gave us 0. And the place value decimal system.
Yes. The concept of 0 as a number and the place value system, these are fundamental to all modern mathematics and science. He also calculated the value of pi very accurately for the time, understood that the Earth rotates on its axis, and made major contributions to algebra and trigonometry.
Just incredible. Anyone else?
Varahamihira made significant contributions to astronomy, mathematics, and astrology. Sushruta, though perhaps earlier, his medical compendium on surgery was likely compiled or revised around this time. It was an age of tremendous intellectual achievement.
And the arts. Architecture.
Stunning developments. The beautiful Buddhist murals at the Ajanta caves reached their peak. Hindu temple architecture evolved significantly, moving from cave temples towards freestanding stone structures like the elegant Dashavatara temple at Deogarh.
And that iron pillar in Delhi, the one that doesn't rust.
That's from the Gupta period too. Attributed to Chandragupta II's time, it stands today, almost 1,600 years later, a testament to the advanced metallurgical skills of the Gupta craftsmen. It's really quite something.
So literature, math, science, art, metallurgy.
Yeah.
You can see why it gets called a golden age. But like the Mauryans, it eventually declined.
It did. After the reign of Skandagupta in the mid-5th century, who fought off initial waves of invaders, the empire faced increasing pressure.
From who?
Primarily invasions by the people known as the Alkan Huns, coming from Central Asia. Leaders like Toramana and his son Mihirakula carved out territories in the northwest and pushed into India.
And these invasions weakened the Guptas.
Severely. They drained the empire's resources, disrupted administration, and led to the loss of territories. By the mid-6th century CE, the Gupta Empire had effectively collapsed, paving the way for that period of regional kingdoms we discussed earlier.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an immense amount of ground there, just sprinting through millennia based on the sources you shared.
We really have.
From those early hunter-gatherers leaving paintings in caves, the mystery of those incredibly planned Indus cities, through the evolution of Vedic society, the explosion of philosophical ideas, the sheer scale and organization of empires like the Mauryan and Gupta,
Right.
and then the vibrant, powerful regional kingdoms that shaped medieval India. It's quite a story.
It truly highlights the incredible dynamism, complexity, and resilience packed into the history of this subcontinent. You see these fascinating cycles, innovation, growth, periods of unification, then fragmentation leading to new regional expressions.
Constant change and adaptation.
Exactly. The sources really reveal this ongoing evolution in society, politics, economy, art, and thought across these vast stretches of time. It was a genuine deep dive into the material you gave us.
And we really appreciate you sharing those sources, letting us explore them like this with you. It's been absolutely fascinating.
It has been my pleasure. And maybe as we wrap up, just a final thought for you to consider, looking back at this whole sweep. We saw this recurring pattern, didn't we? Powerful, centralized empires, Mauryan, Gupta, eventually giving way to a landscape of multiple, strong regional kingdoms. What might that persistent cycle, that rhythm of centralization and fragmentation, tell us about the fundamental challenges, or perhaps the inherent nature of governing and organizing society across such a vast, diverse subcontinent over the longue durée or the long span of history?
Centralization versus regionalism as a constant tension. That's a really interesting question to mull over. Something to think about?
Something to ponder.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.